If you clicked on this video, I assume you want to learn about the Japanese grammar rule koto or no. I am making this video for one of my $10 patrons, Andrew Soto. If you become a patron at this level, you get to be God. Basically, the level is called kami-sama, which means God. You get to be a God and you get to decide one video that I will make of your choice. Now, of course, I have veto power. I'm not going to do something ridiculous that has $1 million budget or is going to take me 10 years to make or whatever, but you can basically dictate whatever video you want me to make, and he wanted me to make a video about koto and no, so that's what I'm doing. By itself, koto really just means thing. But unlike mono, which also means thing, koto is more like to either describe thing as an action or thing as a concept. Tanoshii koto would be like a fun thing to do or fun things in general. Tsumaranai koto or tsumannai koto would be boring things to do, things that are boring. Also, very common phrases that you have probably heard even just listening to anime and reading the subtitles. Anna koto, sonna koto, konna koto, donna koto. Which means like this sort of thing, that sort of thing, what sort of thing. Like, konna koto shiteru hima janai wa yo is like, oh, I don't have time for this. Literally, it's like, I don't have time to be doing this sort of thing. But in good English, it's, I don't have time for this. そんなことしちゃダメですよ. It's like if I'm telling you that, if you're like eating my boyfriend's lunch without his permission, and I tell you, そんなことしちゃダメですよ, I'm saying, hey, you're not supposed to do that. Hey, don't do that. Literally, I'm telling you, hey, that sort of thing is not right. You shouldn't do that sort of thing that you are doing. But literally, well, it literally means that. In good English, it means, hey, don't do that. If you are extremely skilled, I might say about you, どんなことできるじゃん. It's like, wow, dude, like you're good at anything you try. So that's koto as thing. Came up earlier, but the difference between koto and mono is koto is usually referencing a verb or a concept, whereas mono is usually referencing an actual noun. So let's take the adjective omoshiroi, which means interesting, amusing, or fun. If I am doing something fun, it's omoshiroi koto o suru. But if I am perhaps watching something fun or funny, it is omoshiroi mono o miru. That is the basic difference between koto and mono. In the case of thing, generally speaking, I'd say mono is used more commonly for thing, like a definite thing, a definite noun, a definite thing that you're talking about. But again, if you're talking about more like an action or a concept, koto is a little more common. The first time you hear koto in a Japanese class, it'll be you're talking about your hobbies or something. But the first encounter I had with koto was in the lyrics of anime songs. And you have probably heard this if you watch anime and you pay attention when they say something like anata no koto or watashi no koto or kare no koto. Those are all pronouns followed by no koto. It's like my koto, your koto, his koto. And I looked up koto in my little dictionary and it was like thing. And like my thing, your thing, his thing. That's not exactly what it means. If you hear it after a pronoun followed by no, like watashi no koto or anata no koto, it really means you, but there's a bit of a distance there with it. It's more like about you or the concept about you or about me or the concept about me. And the most common way that you're going to hear watashi no koto or anata no koto or kare no koto, it'll be something like anata no koto ga suki or watashi no koto ga suki nano or watashi no koto o dou omou. And all of those are like more relationshipy. It's like, do you like me? Do you have a crush on me? I have a crush on you. How do you feel about me? That's how koto works with personal pronouns. So if you hear a personal pronoun followed by no koto, you might as well just in your mind erase the no koto. It's a very nuanced way of just saying that pronoun and turning it into a little bit more like a concept. So in the bulk of this video, I wanted to explain koto and no in relation to verbs, not adjectives like I was doing earlier. So the easiest way to think of koto grammatically in a sentence, if it comes right after a verb, is it changes the verb into the concept of that verb. So taberu is just to eat, whereas taberu koto is the act of eating or the concept of eating. Neru is to sleep, but neru koto is the action of sleeping or the concept of sleeping. Shinjiru is to believe, whereas shinjiru koto is the concept of believing or the act of believing. So basically you take any verb at its root form, the ru form or the u form of the verb, and you add koto to the end of it, and you're basically turning that verb from an action into a whole concept about that action. Or I also like to describe it as you're kind of turning that verb into a noun. To eat is a verb, whereas the concept of eating, if you think about it as a whole like word in brackets, the concept of eating is a noun. One of the first ways you're going to learn koto if you take a traditional Japanese class, this is the first way that I learned koto, is you use it usually when you're listing your hobbies. So if your hobby is a verb, say, like if singing is one of my hobbies, so if I want to say that my hobby is singing, I don't say, Watashi no shimi wa utau. That means my hobby is sing. Like if I were to translate that literally, it doesn't make sense grammatically. What you would have to say is, Watashi no shimi wa utau koto, which means the act of singing. My hobby is the act of singing or the concept of singing. Eating is another hobby of mine, so I'd say taberu koto. So if I'm listing my hobbies, it would be utau koto, taberu koto, undou suru koto, ryori suru koto, and neko to asobu koto. Neko to asobu koto is a bit of a longer concept. Asobu koto would just be playing. My hobby is playing. Playing what? So neko to means with cats. So neko to asobu koto means the act of playing with cats. So this can be extremely useful when you're introducing yourself to other people, because that's often one of the first things we'll gravitate towards is like, oh, what kinds of things are you into? What are your hobbies? What do you like? What do you dislike? What do you like doing? So you could just say shimi wa, which means my hobbies, or as for my hobbies, and then just list a bunch of verbs and add koto to the end of it. And that makes grammatical sense. So here's another fun thing about koto. Remember how I first mentioned that koto means things, right? But it can also mean the act of if you add it to a verb. So you can actually use it twice in the same sentence in both ways. If your hobby is doing dangerous things, you would say, Watashi no shumi wa abunai koto o suru koto. So watashi no shumi wa is my hobby is, incidentally, that's a very formal way of saying my hobby. Usually you would just say shimi wa. You wouldn't have to say watashi no shimi wa. Or if you are more masculine, you might say ore no shimi wa. But in, plain, generic, polite Japanese, watashi no shimi wa abunai koto means dangerous things. And then o suru changes that whole concept of like dangerous things. Osuru means to do dangerous things. And then I'm adding koto at the end of suru, so it's like the act of doing dangerous things. That's my hobby. Watashi no shimi wa abunai koto o suru koto is a bit clunky and extra wordy and kind of weird. You could also say abunai koto o suru koto ga suki if you wanted to rephrase it as I enjoy or I like doing dangerous things. Or this is a good segue into no. A more natural way to say that sentence would be abunai koto o suru no ga suki, or abunai koto o suru no wa suki, depending on context. So that segued us pretty nicely into no. So all the things that I said about koto, not in the pronoun sense, the watashi no koto, anata no koto, kare no koto, and not in the thing sense, like omoshiroi koto, like interesting or fun things. No can be used pretty much exactly the same way that we were using koto to describe your hobbies or to change a verb into a concept or a noun or an act. The difference between koto and no is, for one, koto is just more textbooky, it's more formal. I noticed, like as I was thinking about examples to include in this video, and I was like coming up with some sample sentences, I always had to stop myself because I would almost always use no instead of koto, just because it's a more personal way of talking, like if you're talking about yourself, because you know yourself really well, so you can say more conclusive statements about yourself without any ambiguities. You can be a little more sure about yourself, and you can be a little more sure about like people that are close to you. So that's why you could use no. It's just more clear. It's less generalized. Koto is a little more generalized and it's a little more formal. So if I say neko wa asobu koto ga suki, I'm kind of making a generalized statement of like, as for cats, they like playing, right? But if I'm talking about my own cat, I'd be like, watashi no neko-chan wa asobu no ga daisuki. It's like, I know my cat. I know she loves playing, so I can say with confidence, like my cat, she loves playing. So it's a little more likely that I'd use no. But yeah, for the most part, they are interchangeable. In that sense, it's just if you use koto, you're going to sound a little more formal and a little more like a textbook. And no rolls off the tongue a lot easier. So that's probably why in my brain, I just kind of switch over to using no. And when I was trying to think of sample sentences for this video, I kept going no. So I love reading manga. Watashi wa manga o yomu koto ga suki, or watashi wa manga o yomu no ga suki. Same thing, same meaning. It's just one of them is a little more polite and a little more textbooky, and the other one is I sound more like a normal person. So one way though that no and koto are not interchangeable for each other in this sense is if I say watashi no shumi wa asobu koto. My hobby is the act of playing, the concept of playing. If I'm ending the sentence with it, with this koto, I cannot end it with no. I can't say watashi no shimi wa asobu no. That doesn't really, it's weird. If you're going to use no, you have to follow it with something. So if I were to rework that sentence, my hobby, or I like playing, or my hobby is playing, I would then have to restructure the sentence to say asobu no ga suki instead of watashi no shumi wa asobu koto.
And now a word from our sponsor. Has this ever happened to you?
Man, I love Sarah's videos so much. I just wish I didn't have to watch them for free.
Patreon can fix that.
Patreon?
I just added a new $10 tier. If you become a patron at that level, I will make a video about anything you want me to.
Link is in the video description below. Back to the show.
So the way that you can make some sentences out of koto or no and suki, that's a very common way that you use koto or no, is noun wa, verb koto or no, ga suki. And then you can add des at the end if you want to be like polite about it, right? So for some examples, if your noun is cat and your verb is play, you could say neko wa, as for cats, asobu koto ga suki desu. Cats generally enjoy playing, and I sound a bit like a textbook as I say this, versus neko wa asobu no ga suki, and I'm being a little more casual about it, and I'm probably a bit more of an authority on cats, or you and I have a closer relationship, so I can use no instead of koto. Let's say that I am the noun and that eating is the verb, so watashi wa taberu no ga suki. I love eating. Or watashi wa taberu koto ga suki desu. I, a very polite and sophisticated person, enjoy eating. What if I want to say something specific that I enjoy eating? I don't necessarily enjoy eating all things. How about sushi? Watashi wa sushi o taberu koto ga suki desu. If I want to be very polite about it, I don't know you very well, and I'm telling you elegantly like a textbook that I enjoy eating sushi. Or sushi o taberu no ga suki. I didn't notice that I dropped the watashi wa. It's like everybody knows I'm talking about myself, especially if somebody asks me, like, what do you like doing? I'd say, sushi o taberu no ga suki. It's like, yeah, I like eating sushi. So what if you don't like doing something, or you want to talk about somebody not liking doing something? It's the same sentence structure, but you replace suki with kirai. So my boyfriend does not like exercising. This is true. It's a real problem. I'd keep trying to get him to exercise, but that would be kare wa. So kare, it means he, but it also means my boyfriend, actually. Like kareshi is like the more, I guess, official polite way of saying boyfriend, but kare is a lot more casual and more common. That's usually what people call a boyfriend. It's just kare, not kareshi. So kare wa undo suru no ga kirai, or undo suru koto ga kirai desu. I don't like working outside of the home. Watashi wa soto de oshigoto o suru no ga kirai. Or watashi wa soto de oshigoto o suru koto ga kirai desu. I just went and changed my outfit and took off all my makeup and changed my hair. I'm totally not filming this part on a different day because I forgot something. Anyway, I'm going to talk about now what happens when koto comes after the past tense of a verb. Before I only looked at koto coming after the present tense of a verb, but now I'm going to look at it coming after the past tense of the verb. So you always use the plain form. In past tense, it's going to be the ta form, not the mashita form. So if you have a past tense of a plain verb and you follow it with koto, it means the fact that I did this verb. So mananda koto means the fact that I learned, tabeta koto means the fact that I ate, mita koto means the fact that I saw. If it's just that by itself, like I'm talking about just isolating this one phrase. If you add other things around that, then it can change the meaning. But just isolating past tense of verb with koto after it, it just means the fact that I did this verb. If you want to expand upon that on the front end, here's a very common expression, very romantic. Kimi to deatta koto. That means the fact that I met you. Kimi is you, kind of a softer romantic version of you. Deau is to meet, as in like for the first time, to encounter, to come upon. So kimi ni deatta means I met you. But if you say kimi ni deatta koto, that means the fact that I met you. And then if you follow that with something like wa unme nanka janai, that means the fact that I met you, it's not stupid fate. Unme is fate, nanka is like stupid whatever came before me, that silly thing called fate. So the fact that I met you is not fate. That's how you can use koto in that case with the past tense of a verb. So this is not to be confused with mono. If you add mono after the past tense of a verb, mananda mono means the things that I learned or the thing that I learned, not the fact that I learned thing. Tabeta mono means like the thing or the things that I ate. Mita mono is the thing or the things that I saw. So not to be confused with mono. Also with this rule of, the fact that this verb happened, you cannot use no in place of koto. In this case, it's koto. And you can't use no in the place of koto if it's just the phrase, past tense of verb followed by koto, no words before, no words after. Just mita koto, mananda koto, kimi to neguriaeta koto, kimi ni deatta koto. You cannot add no to the end of the sentence instead of koto and have it make sense grammatically. And another way that you can use koto after the past tense of the verb, this is extremely common. You will probably learn this in first or second year Japanese. It is the past tense of a verb followed by koto ga aru or koto ga nai. So for some examples, mita, the verb past tense for to see, so saw. Mita koto ga aru means I have seen it. Mita koto ga nai means I have not seen it. Tabeta koto ga aru means I have eaten it. Tabeta koto ga nai means I have not eaten it. And then you can expand upon this concept. So I could say, hora eiga o mita koto ga nai. That means I have never seen a horror movie. Sushi o tabeta koto ga nai. I've never eaten sushi before. Demo steiki o tabeta koto ga aru. And that means, but I have eaten steak. So this sentence pattern is extremely useful if people are asking you if you've done certain things, like if you're meeting people for the first time and you're talking about yourself, they're talking about themselves and you're comparing notes. Oh, what have you done? What experiences have you had or not had? And then you can list them this way. If somebody asks you the question, sushi o tabeta koto aru, or sushi tabeta koto arimasu ka, if they're being polite, you can actually respond with simply an arimasu for yes, or arimasen or nai desu for no, I have not. You don't have to repeat the whole sentence. You don't have to say, hai, sushi wa tabeta koto ga arimasu. It's like, that's very textbooky, that's very Japanese classy. If you just want to respond simply yes or no, instead of saying hai or ie, you'd say aru or nai, or arimasu or arimasen, depending on how polite you want to be. And in this case, you cannot use no. If you say mita no ga aru instead of mita koto ga aru, that means something else, and that would be a different video. Well, I think I'm gonna go change my clothes and put on some makeup again, just because I feel like it, not because this is a totally different day. So here is another sentence structure. If you go noun o, verb koto or no, wa adjective. So here's an example. 誰かを愛することが素晴らしい. That means loving someone is wonderful. 誰か is our noun, which is someone. 愛する is our verb. And 素晴らしい, fantastic, wonderful, is our adjective. So loving someone is wonderful. Here's another sample sentence. 赤ちゃんを産むことが辛い. That means it's difficult, it's tough, giving birth to a baby. 赤ちゃん is baby, our noun. 産む is our verb, which is to give birth. And 辛い is our adjective, which means it is painful or tough, difficult. Here's another sentence. 動画を作ることが楽しい. 動画 is video, 作る is to make, and 楽しい is fun. So making videos is fun. And now here's an example of using koto and no in the same sentence. You can do this. So this is actually a line of lyrics from the image song of one of my favorite characters, Tasuki from Shigi Yugi. It is 夢を生きるのは難しいことじゃない. So 夢を生きる means to live your dreams, to live out your dreams, to make your dreams come true, to live them, to live your dreams. It literally means to live your dreams, and it's kind of a poetic phrase, but and then you add no wa at the end of that. So the no in this case is like koto in that it is changing 夢を生きる. It's changing that into a concept. So what I like to think of it as is you put 夢を生きる into brackets, and then you add no wa at the end of that. So you can replace 夢を生きる with just a single verb like 生きる. You know how to conjugate 生きるのは or 生きることは. That means the concept of living or the act of living. 夢を生きるのは then means the act of living your dreams or the concept of living your dreams. We're basically changing living your dreams into just a single thought, a single noun, a single concept that we're talking about. Cleans things up a little bit. That's why I like to put it in brackets. 難しいこと. So 難しい is difficult. 難しいこと is a difficult thing, as in like a difficult thing to do, right? Because it's not a difficult noun exactly, it's a difficult thing to do because we're using koto instead of mono. And then janai, if you add that to the end of something, it's basically saying everything that I just said, it's the opposite of that. So 難しいこと is it is a difficult thing to do, but 難しいことじゃない means it is not a difficult thing to do. So the whole thought, 夢を生きるのは the act of living your dreams. 難しいことじゃない is not a difficult thing. So the act of living your dreams is not a difficult thing to do. Literally what the whole thing means. Living your dreams isn't so tough. Better translation. And for a final example of koto used twice in a sentence, in the same way both times. This actually, I stumbled upon this. It is one of the songs from Les Mis, the musical, but the Japanese version of Les Mis. So the original song in English is, to love another person is to see the face of God. Very poetic sounding kind of sentence. So in Japanese, that is, 誰かを愛することは神様のおそばにいることだ. So let's break this down into two parts. So 誰かを愛することは. So 誰か is someone, を愛する. So 愛する means to love. So 誰かを愛する means love someone. And then you're adding koto to the end of 愛すること. So 愛すること is the act of or the concept of loving someone. 誰かを愛すること. So the act of loving someone. Wa. So basically put 誰かを愛すること, put that whole thing in brackets, and then wa. The particle comes after that. So basically what that wa is saying is, well, everything that came before me, that's the topic of this sentence that I'm talking about right now. So the topic of this sentence is the act of loving someone. As for the act of loving someone, ... Now I'm going to tell you something about it. I'm going to finish that thought. 神様のおそばにいることだ. Kami-sama means God, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, the God tier of my Patreon. For only $10, you get to be God, and I'll make a video of your choice. Kami-sama no osoba. So osoba is like the polite, reverent, regal way of saying soba, which, I mean, it does also mean noodles, but it means to be close or beside or near someone. So kami-sama no osoba means close to God. Kami-sama no soba ni iru. So iru means to exist or to be. Ni iru means I'm existing or being beside or with the thing that came before ni, in which case is kami-sama no osoba. So near God. So being or existing near God. And then we're adding koto after iru. So I'm not just existing or being near God. This is the concept of, or the act of, existing or being near God. And then the da at the very, very end of the sentence is just a very affirming and also kind of not formal or polite necessarily, more regal way of saying desu. So I'm just being, very poetic and regal about this whole statement that I'm making here. And the whole statement is the act of loving, so aisuru koto, the act of loving someone, dareka o aisuru koto wa kami-sama no soba ni iru koto da. The act of loving someone is the act of being near God. So that's literally what it means in Japanese, but that was how they translated the original English. To love another person is to see the face of God. Now, this is another great example of why localization is super important. Notice how the Japanese translation of that English sentence, it's not the same. They didn't literally say to love another person is to see the face of God. The first part was the same. Dareka o aisuru koto wa does mean to love another person, or the act of loving another person. That's basically exactly the same thing, just worded ever so slightly differently, but it's the exact same meaning and concept. But then, instead of to see the face of God, that would be like kami-sama no kao o miru koto. That doesn't resonate as poetically with them in Japanese. That sounds kind of weird in Japanese. So they instead translate it as to be near God. And if you think about it, if you're like sitting right next to God, you'll be able to see her face because she's like right there, right? So of course, it's like, being next to God, seeing her face, pretty much the same sentiment. It just doesn't ring as well, doesn't resonate as well in Japanese to word it literally the way it was worded in English. So that was your crash course in koto and no. If you want your own video made, go ahead and become a patron at the $10 level. And thank you again to Andrew Soto for being my patron at that level and for suggesting the topic of this video. Also, if you want more lecture style Japanese grammar videos like this, let me know. And bye! You could also say "suki mono wa." Notice I'm using mono there because I'm talking about things. Oh, that's a really bad example. That's really confusing. I'm not going to use that. Sorry, future Sarah. I'm going to reorganize the order of this video because that was a good segue into no. Yeah, we've got a lot for the blooper reel this time. Oh boy. Okay.